They said I wasn't good enough. They said my family wasn't rich enough. They demanded gold, cash, a car, and a house just so my daughter could marry their son. I watched my husband break himself trying to arrange loans. I watched my daughter cry herself to sleep thinking she was a burden. And then one morning I woke up and realized something. This wasn't love. This wasn't marriage. This was a transaction. So I did something nobody expected. I canceled the wedding. I took every single rupee we'd saved, every piece of jewelry we'd bought, and I booked 5 tickets. My husband thought I'd lost my mind. My daughter thought I'd ruined her life, but I smiled, packed our bags, and said, "We're going on vacation." What happened next changed everything. And I mean everything. My name is Mira, and I want to tell you a story that still makes my heart ache when I think about it, but also fills me with a strange kind of pride I never thought I'd feel. It's a story about my daughter Ananya, about a wedding that never happened, and about the day I finally found my voice after staying silent for too many years. I'm not someone who usually makes bold decisions. I'm just a mother, a wife, a woman who spent most of her life making sure everyone else was happy, even if it meant swallowing my own pain. But sometimes, life pushes you to a corner where silence is no longer an option. Sometimes, you have to stand up, even when your knees are shaking. This is the story of that moment. It all started about a year and a half ago, when Ananya came home from college with a glow on her face that I hadn't seen in years. She was 23 then, bright, beautiful, studying to be a teacher. She'd always been a quiet girl like me, but that day she was different. She sat down next to me in the kitchen while I was cutting vegetables, and she said, "Ma, I need to tell you something." I remember looking at her and seeing the nervousness in her eyes, the way her fingers twisted the edge of her dupatta. I wiped my hands and turned to her fully. "What is it, Beta?" I asked gently. She took a deep breath and said, "There's someone. His name is Ravi. We've been talking for a few months now. I really like him, Ma. I think I love him." My first reaction wasn't shock, it was warmth. My daughter had found someone she cared about. "Isn't that what every mother hopes for?" I smiled and took her hand. "Tell me about him," I said. She told me everything. Ravi was 26, working in a bank in the city, educated, respectful, from a decent family. They met through mutual friends at a college event, and slowly, over chai and conversations, they'd grown close. She showed me his photo on her phone. He looked like a nice boy, clean-cut, gentle eyes, a soft smile. "Does he know about us, about our family?" I asked carefully. She nodded. "Yes, Ma, I told him everything. He said it doesn't matter. He said he wants to marry me, not my bank balance." I felt relief wash over me. You see, we weren't a wealthy family. My husband, Arvind, worked as a clerk in a government office. We lived in a small 2-bedroom flat on the outskirts of the city. We had enough to eat, enough to live simply, but we didn't have the kind of money that makes you feel secure. And in our community, in our society, that often became a problem when it came to marriages. But Ananya seemed so sure, so hopeful, and I didn't want to crush that. So I spoke to Arvind that evening. He was cautious at first, like he always was with big decisions, but when I told him how happy Ananya seemed, he softened. "If she's happy, then let's meet the boy and his family," he said. "We'll do this properly." And so we arranged a meeting. Ravi's family lived about 2 hours away, in a town that was slightly bigger than ours, slightly more well off. The meeting was set for a Sunday afternoon at their home. I remember the morning we left. I woke up early and made sure Ananya looked perfect. I dressed her in a beautiful pink salwar suit, braided fresh jasmine into her hair, and put a little kajal in her eyes. She looked like a dream. Arvind wore his best shirt and I wore a simple sari. We wanted to make a good impression, but we also wanted to be ourselves. The drive felt long. Ananya barely spoke. She kept looking out the window, her hands folded tightly in her lap. I reached over and squeezed her hand. "It's going to be fine," I whispered. She smiled at me, but I could see the worry in her eyes. When we arrived, Ravi's house was bigger than I'd expected. It was a 2-story building with a big gate and a well-kept garden. My heart sank a little. I'd hoped we were more equal in status, but this was different. Still, I held my head high. We weren't less than anyone. We had love, respect, and dignity. Ravi's mother opened the door. She was a tall woman, draped in an expensive silk sari, gold bangles clinking on her wrists. She looked us up and down before stepping aside to let us in. "Come in," she said, her tone polite but cold. We were led to the living room where Ravi's father sat on a large sofa reading a newspaper. He barely looked up when we entered. Ravi was there too, standing near the doorway, and when Ananya saw him, her face lit up. He smiled back at her, and for a moment I felt hope again. We sat down. Tea was served, along with snacks, and for a while the conversation was formal and distant. Ravi's father asked Arvind about his job, his salary, our family background. Arvind answered honestly, humbly. I could see Ravi's mother's expression shift with every answer, her lips pressing tighter, her eyes narrowing slightly. Then she turned to me. "And you, do you work?" she asked. "No," I said softly. "I take care of the home." She nodded slowly, as if she'd expected that answer and found it lacking. Then she looked at Ananya. "You're studying to be a teacher?" "Yes, Auntie," Ananya replied, her voice steady but quiet. "That's nice," Ravi's mother said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "But after marriage, will you continue working?" Ananya hesitated. She looked at Ravi, then back at his mother. I'd like to if it's possible." Ravi's mother smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Well, we'll see. Our family has certain expectations. A daughter-in-law's first duty is to her home, her husband, and her in-laws." I felt my stomach tight. This wasn't a conversation anymore, it was an interview, and we were failing. Arvind tried to steer the conversation back. "We're simple people," he said, "but we've raised Ananya with good values. She's respectful, hardworking, and kind. We only want her happiness." Ravi's father finally looked up from his newspaper. "Happiness is important," he said slowly, "but so is stability. Marriage is not just about love, it's about responsibility, about what each side brings to the table." I knew what he was really saying. He was talking about money. "We understand," Arvind said carefully. "We're prepared to do our part." Ravi's mother leaned forward slightly. "Good," she said, "because we do have some expectations. It's tradition, after all." And that's when it started. That's when everything began to fall apart. She listed it all out calmly, as if she were reading a grocery list. Gold jewelry for the bride, at least 50,000 rupees worth. Cash gift to the groom's family, 1 lakh rupees. A car for Ravi because he needed reliable transportation for work. Furniture for their future home. And if possible, a contribution toward a down payment on a house. I felt the air leave my lungs. Arvind's face went pale. Ananya looked like she might cry. Ravi, sitting across from us, said nothing. He just stared at the floor. This is a lot," Arvind said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We're not a wealthy family. We'll do what we can, but nothing," Ravi's father interrupted. "If you want your daughter to marry into a respectable family, this is what's required. We're not asking for anything unreasonable. This is standard." Standard. That word echoed in my head. I looked at Ravi, waiting for him to say something, to stand up for Ananya, to say that none of this mattered. But he didn't. Just sat there, silent, obedient. We left that house in silence. The drive home felt twice as long. Ananya cried quietly in the back seat. Arvind gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. And I sat there, staring out the window, feeling something crack inside me. That night, Arvind and I stayed up late, going over our finances, trying to figure out how we could possibly meet their demands. He talked about taking loans, selling my mother's old jewelry, borrowing from relatives. And I listened, numb, knowing that no matter what we did, it would never be enough. Because this wasn't about tradition. This wasn't about respect. This was about greed. And my daughter was caught in the middle of it. The weeks after that first meeting were some of the hardest of my life, and I've lived through plenty of hard times before. But this was different. This wasn't about struggling to pay rent or making ends meet on a tight budget. This was about watching my daughter lose a little bit of herself every single day and feeling completely powerless to stop it. Ananya stopped smiling. She'd come home from college, go straight to her room, and close the door. She stopped eating properly. I'd make her favorite foods, bring them to her room, and find the plate untouched hours later. At night, I'd hear her crying through the thin walls, trying to muffle the sound with her pillow, but I always heard it. It broke my heart into 1,000 pieces. Arvind threw himself into finding solutions. He became obsessed with it. Every evening, he'd sit at the dining table with papers spread out in front of him, calculator in hand, writing down numbers, crossing them out, writing them again. He approached his older brother for a loan, swallowed his pride, and asked for help. His brother gave us 20,000 rupees, but it came with judgment, with questions, with a look that said, "Why are you doing this to yourself?" Arvind went to the bank and inquired about personal loans. The interest rates were crushing, but he didn't care. He was ready to sign anything, ready to drown us in debt for the next 10 years just to make this marriage happen. I watched him age in those weeks. New lines appeared on his face. His hair seemed grayer. He stopped sleeping well. He'd wake up in the middle of the night and sit by the window, staring out into the darkness, lost in thoughts I couldn't reach. And I hated it. I hated what this was doing to him, to Ananya, to all of us. But I still hadn't found my voice. I was still the silent wife, the obedient mother, the woman who kept her pain locked inside and tried to keep everyone else afloat. Ravi called Ananya sometimes. She'd step out onto the balcony to talk to him, her voice low, her shoulders hunched. I never asked what they talked about, but I could guess. He probably told her to be patient, that everything would work out, that his parents would come around. Empty words. Comfort without action. One evening, about 3 weeks after that first meeting, Ravi's mother called our house. Arvind answered, and I watched his expression shift from hope to resignation. When he hung up, he looked at me and said, "They want to meet again, to finalize things." Finalize, as if this were a business deal. We went back to their house the following Sunday. This time the atmosphere was different. It was colder, more formal. There were no snacks, no tea, just a discussion, a negotiation. Ravi's father did most of the talking. He laid out the demands again, but this time with more detail. The gold jewelry needed to be 22 carat, purchased from a specific jeweler they trusted. The car needed to be a mid-range sedan, not a cheap hatchback. The cash needed to be handed over 1 week before the wedding, not on the day itself. Arvind nodded along, his face blank, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. I sat next to him, feeling like I was watching a slow-motion disaster unfold. Then Ravi's mother looked directly at me. "And we'll need to see the jewelry before the wedding," she said. "Just to make sure it's appropriate." Appropriate. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from saying something I'd regret. Ananya, sitting beside me, reached for my hand under the folds of my sari. Her fingers were ice cold. "We'll do our best," Arvind said quietly. Ravi's father leaned back in his chair, studying us. "Your best needs to be good enough," he said. "We're giving you our son. That's not something we take lightly." I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and say, "And we're giving you our daughter, doesn't that matter? Isn't she worth more than gold and cars and cash?" But I didn't. I stayed silent. We left that house again, and this time Ananya didn't cry. She just stared out the window, her face empty, like she'd given up. And that scared me more than anything. That night, after Arvind fell asleep, I sat alone in the kitchen with a cup of tea I didn't drink. I thought about my own wedding, decades ago. It hadn't been perfect. My family had struggled to meet demands too, but it was different back then, or maybe I was just too young to see how wrong it all was. I thought about Ananya's future. Even if we managed to gather everything they wanted, what kind of life was she walking into? A life where she was valued only for what her family could provide. A life where her worth was measured in gold. I felt something shift inside me that night. It was small at first, just a whisper, a tiny spark of anger that I'd been pushing down for weeks. But it was there, and it was growing. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my younger sister, Priya. She lived in another city, had married into a more progressive family, and had always been the bold one between us. When I told her everything, she was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "Mira, why are you doing this?" "What do you mean?" I asked. "I mean, why are you letting them treat you like this? Why are you letting them treat Ananya like this?" "It's for her happiness," I said weakly. "Is she happy?" Priya asked. I didn't have an answer. "Listen to me," Priya said firmly. "You're my older sister and I've always looked up to you. But right now you're making a mistake. You're teaching Ananya that she has to buy her way into love. You're teaching her that she's not enough as she is. Is that really what you want? Her words hit me like cold water. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, tears streaming down my face. I don't know what else to do, I whispered. Then stop, Priya said. Just stop. Stop trying to meet their demands. Stop bending over backward for people who don't respect you, and start asking yourself what Ananya really needs. We talked for over an hour. Priya didn't tell me what to do, but she helped me see things clearly. She reminded me that I had a choice, that we all did. When I hung up, I felt different. The spark of anger had grown into something stronger, determination. That evening, I sat Ananya down, just the two of us in her room. Beta, I said gently, I need to ask you something and I need you to be honest with me. She looked at me with tired eyes. What is it, Ma? Are you happy? I asked. She blinked, surprised. What? With Ravi, with this wedding, with everything that's happening? Are you truly happy? Her lips trembled. She looked down at her hands. I don't know anymore, she whispered. I thought I was. I thought he was different, but now I feel like I'm just a burden, like I'm the reason you and Papa are suffering. I pulled her into my arms and held her tight. You are not a burden, I said fiercely. You are my daughter, you are precious. And if anyone makes you feel otherwise, they don't deserve you. She cried into my shoulder, and I cried too. When we finally pulled apart, I wiped her tears and said, I'm going to ask you one more thing. If we could walk away from all of this right now, would you? She looked at me, eyes wide. But what about everything Papa's already done? The money, the loans? Forget the money, I said. I'm asking about you, your heart, your life. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, yes, I would walk away. And that was all I needed to hear. Making a decision and acting on it are two very different things, and I learned that the hard way. After my conversation with Ananya, I knew in my heart what needed to be done. But knowing and doing, there's a whole world of fear and doubt between those two. I didn't say anything to Arvind that night. I wanted to, but I couldn't find the words. How do you tell your husband, who's been working himself to exhaustion trying to make something impossible happen, that you want to stop? How do you tell him that all his effort, all his sacrifice might be for nothing? So I stayed quiet for a few more days, carrying this heavy decision inside me like a stone. Arvind continued his mission. He finalized a personal loan from the bank, came home with papers that needed signatures, his face tight with stress but also with a strange kind of relief. We can do this, he told me that evening, spreading the papers on the kitchen table. It's going to be tight for a few years and we'll have to cut back on everything, but we can meet their demands. I looked at those papers, at the numbers written in cold black ink, at my husband's hopeful, exhausted face, and I felt something break inside me. Arvind, I said quietly. Can we talk? He looked up, surprised by my tone. What is it? I took a deep breath. I don't think we should do this. He stared at me, confused. What do you mean? I mean this wedding, these demands. All of it. I don't think we should go through with it. The confusion on his face turned to shock, then something like panic. Mira, what are you saying? We've already come this far. We've already committed. Committed to what? I interrupted, my voice rising slightly. To drowning ourselves in debt, to selling everything we have, to teaching our daughter that she has to buy her way into a marriage. It's not like that, Arvind said, but his voice was weak. Then what is it like? I asked. Tell me honestly. Do you think Ravi's family respects us? Do you think they respect Ananya? He didn't answer, he just looked down at the papers. I spoke to Ananya, I continued, softer now. I asked her if she was happy. She's not. She feels like a burden. She cries every night. Is this really what we want for her? Arvind rubbed his face with both hands, a gesture of complete exhaustion. What choice do we have? He asked. She loves him. Does she? I asked. Or does she love the idea of him? The idea of what he could have been? Arvind was silent for a long time. Then he said, if we back out now, people will talk. Our family, our community, everyone will say we couldn't keep our word. Ananya's reputation. Her reputation, I said, feeling anger rise in my chest. What about her happiness? What about her dignity? Are we really going to sacrifice those things because we're afraid of what people will say? He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen in weeks. Doubt, not in me, but in the path we'd been walking. I don't know what to do, he admitted, his voice breaking. I just want to do right by her. Then let's do what's actually right, I said. Not what's expected, not what's traditional, what's right. We stayed up talking until nearly 2 in the morning. It wasn't an easy conversation. Arvind was torn between his instinct to protect and provide, and the growing realization that what we were doing wasn't protection at all. It was surrender. By the end of it, he was exhausted, emotionally drained, but he looked at me and said, "Okay, if you really think this is what's best, then we'll stop, we'll call it off." I felt relief and terror in equal measure. "We'll tell Ananya first," I said. Together. The next morning, the three of us sat down in the living room. Ananya looked between us nervous. "What's going on?" she asked. Arvind and I exchanged a glance, then I reached for her hand. "Beta," I said gently, "your father and I have been thinking, and we've decided that we're not going to move forward with this wedding." Her eyes went wide. "What, why?" "Because it's not right," I said. "Because you deserve better than a family that treats you like a transaction. Because your happiness matters more than anything else." Tears filled her eyes. "But Ma, I told you I'd be okay. I don't want you and Papa to." "Stop," I said firmly. "Stop putting yourself last. Stop making yourself small so others can feel big. You are worth more than gold, more than cars, more than any amount of money. And if Ravi and his family can't see that, then they don't deserve you." She broke down crying, but this time it was different. It wasn't the quiet, hopeless crying of the past weeks. It was a release, a letting go. Arvind put his arm around her. "We're going to be okay," he said, "all of us." But even as we sat there, holding each other, I knew the hardest part was still ahead. We had to actually cancel the wedding. We had to face Ravi and his family, and we had to face our own community. I decided to make the first call. I picked up the phone and dialed Ravi's mother. My hand was shaking, but my voice was steady. She answered on the third ring. "Hello, namaste," I said. "This is Mira, Ananya's mother." "Oh," she said, her tone cool. "Yes. I'm calling to inform you that we won't be moving forward with the wedding," I said simply. There was a pause, then, "Excuse me. We're calling off the engagement," I repeated. "We don't think this is the right match for our daughter." Another pause, longer this time. Then her voice came back, sharp and angry. "You can't be serious. Do you have any idea what this will do to our family's reputation? We've already told people, made arrangements." "I understand," I said calmly, "and I apologize for any inconvenience, but this is our final decision." "Inconvenience," she snapped. "This is more than inconvenience. You made a commitment. You can't just back out because you can't afford." "This has nothing to do with money," I interrupted. "This has to do with respect and dignity, which, unfortunately, we haven't received from your family." I could hear her breathing heavily on the other end. "You'll regret this," she said coldly. "No one will want to marry your daughter now. You've ruined her future." Her words stung, but I didn't let them shake me. "Her future is not ruined," I said. "It's just beginning." And then I hung up. My hands were trembling, my heart was racing, but I felt something I hadn't felt in months: power, control. The next few days were chaos. Ravi called Ananya multiple times, but she didn't answer. His mother called back, trying a different approach, pleading, guilt-tripping, then angry again. We stopped answering. Word spread quickly through our community. Relatives called, asking if the rumors were true. Some were supportive, most were shocked. A few were openly critical. "How could you do this?" one of my aunts said. "That boy was a good match. You'll never find another family willing to take her now." I smiled politely and said, "Then maybe we're not looking for another family. Maybe we're looking for something better." Arvind handled the financial side. He canceled the loan, returned what money we'd already borrowed, and started the process of getting back deposits we'd made for the wedding venue and catering. It was messy, but it was manageable. And through it all, Ananya slowly started to come back to life. The color returned to her face. She started eating again. She even smiled. One evening, about a week after we'd canceled everything, she came to me while I was cooking dinner. "Ma," she said softly. I turned to her. "Yes, Beta. Thank you," she said, her eyes shining, "for saving me." I pulled her into a hug and whispered, "You saved yourself. I just helped you see that you could." With the wedding canceled, the loans returned, and the weight of expectation lifted, I thought we'd finally have some peace. But life doesn't work that way, does it? Just when you think you've solved one problem, another one appears, or an old wound you thought had healed starts to ache again. For a few days, things were quiet. Almost too quiet. Ananya went back to college, trying to focus on her final semester. Arvind returned to work, relieved but still carrying the emotional exhaustion of everything we'd been through. And I went back to my daily routine, cooking, cleaning, keeping the house together. But something inside me had changed. I wasn't the same woman who had sat silently in Ravi's living room, swallowing insults. I'd found something I didn't know I had, a backbone, a voice. And once you find that, you can't unfind it. About 10 days after we'd called off the wedding, I was at the market buying vegetables when I ran into Mrs. Sharma, one of our neighbors. She was the kind of woman who knew everyone's business and made it her mission to have an opinion on all of it. "Mira," she called out, waving at me from across the street. I considered pretending I didn't hear her, but that would only make things worse. So I smiled and waited for her to approach. "I heard about Ananya's wedding," she said, lowering her voice as if we were discussing some scandal. "Such a shame, that boy seemed so nice." "It wasn't the right match," I said simply, picking through a pile of tomatoes. "But why?" she pressed. "Everyone's talking about it. Some people are saying you couldn't afford the dowry, others are saying the boy changed his mind. People can say whatever they want," I interrupted, keeping my tone polite but firm. "The truth is, we decided it wasn't right for our daughter. That's all." She blinked, clearly not satisfied with that answer. "But Mira, at her age, and with this kind of talk going around, it's going to be hard to find another match. You should have just adjusted." That word, adjusted, how many times had I heard that in my life? Adjust to your husband's moods. Adjust to your in-laws' demands. Adjust to less money, less respect, less happiness. Always adjust, never expect. "I'm done adjusting," I said, looking her straight in the eye. "And so is my daughter." Mrs. Sharma looked taken aback. She mumbled something about modern thinking and hurried off. I paid for my vegetables and walked home, feeling both proud and exhausted. When I got back, Arvind was sitting at the dining table, looking at something on his phone. He had a strange expression on his face, somewhere between amused and thoughtful. "What is it?" I asked, setting down my bags. He turned the phone toward me. "Look at this." It was a travel website, showing pictures of beaches, mountains, temples, beautiful places I'd only ever seen in magazines or on television. "I don't understand," I said. "We've been so focused on the wedding, on trying to meet everyone's demands, that we forgot something," Arvind said. "We actually saved a decent amount of money. Between what I'd set aside, what we got back from deposits, and the loan we didn't take, we have more than we've had in years." I stared at him. "Okay. So I was thinking," he said, a small smile appearing on his face. "What if we did something we've never done? What if we took a trip, a real vacation, all of us?" I almost laughed. "Arvind, we don't take vacations. We've never taken a vacation, not once in 25 years of marriage." "Exactly," he said. "Don't you think it's time we did?" I sat down slowly, my mind racing. A vacation. The idea felt foreign, almost ridiculous. We were simple people. We didn't do things like that. But then again, we'd also never canceled a wedding before. We'd never stood up to an entire community's expectations. Maybe it was time to do a lot of things we'd never done. "Where would we even go?" I asked. Arvind scrolled through the website. "Goa, Kerala, Rajasthan, there are so many places. We could go to the mountains, the beach, wherever we want." I felt something flutter in my chest. Hope, excitement, I wasn't sure. "What about Ananya?" I asked. "She has college." "It's her last semester," Arvind said. "She can afford to miss a week. And honestly, after everything she's been through, don't you think she deserves a break?" He was right. We all deserved a break. That evening, when Ananya came home, we sat her down and told her the idea. Her reaction was similar to mine, first confusion, then disbelief, then cautious excitement. "Are you serious?" she asked. "We're really going to take a vacation. Why not?" I said, surprising myself with how confident I sounded. We've spent so much time worrying about what other people think, what other people want. Maybe it's time we did something just for us. Ananya's face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in months. Where are we going? That's the best part, Arvind said. We get to choose. Over the next few days, we sat together every evening, researching places, watching videos, reading reviews. It became a family project, something that brought us closer. Ananya wanted to see the ocean. Arvind wanted to visit historical sites. I just wanted to be somewhere peaceful, somewhere I could breathe. Eventually, we settled on Kerala. The backwaters, the beaches, the greenery, it looked like paradise. We booked a 7-day package that included a houseboat stay, a beach resort, and tour of tea plantations and spice gardens. It wasn't extravagant, but it was more than we'd ever done for ourselves. When I told my sister Priya, she laughed with joy. "I'm so proud of you," she said. "This is exactly what you needed." But not everyone was supportive. When word got out that we were taking a vacation instead of saving for another wedding or recovering from the broken engagement, the gossip started up again. "Can you believe it?" I overheard one neighbor say at the market. "They cancel the wedding and now they're off enjoying themselves like nothing happened. No shame at all." I didn't confront her. I didn't need to. Let them talk. Let them judge. For the first time in my life, I didn't care. The day before we were supposed to leave, Ravi called, not Ananya me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hello," I said cautiously. "Auntie, it's Ravi." His voice was quiet, almost sheepish. "I know." There was a long pause, then he said, "I heard you canceled the wedding." "Yes," I said simply. I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything, for not standing up to my parents, for letting things get so out of hand. I was surprised. I hadn't expected an apology. "Why didn't you say something earlier?" I asked. "When it mattered." "I don't know," he admitted. I thought if I just went along with it, everything would work out. I didn't realize how much it was hurting Ananya. Or you." "She loved you," I said quietly. "Maybe she still does, but love isn't enough when there's no respect." "I know," he said. I wanted you to know I'm sorry, and I hope she finds someone who deserves her." "She will," I said. "Or maybe she won't, maybe she'll find something even better herself." After we hung up, I stood there for a moment, holding the phone, feeling a strange sense of closure. Ravi wasn't a bad person, he was just weak. And weakness, I'd learned, could be just as damaging as cruelty. That night, as I packed our bags for the trip, Ananya came into my room and sat on the bed. "Ma, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you think I made a mistake, falling for Ravi?" I stopped folding clothes and looked at her. "No," I said. "You didn't make a mistake. You were brave enough to open your heart. That's never a mistake. The mistake would have been staying with someone who didn't value you." She nodded slowly. "I feel lighter now, like I can finally breathe." "Good," I said, smiling. "Then we're doing something right." The next morning, we loaded our bags into a taxi and headed to the train station. As we pulled away from our building, I looked back at it one last time. It looked smaller somehow, less powerful, and I realized something. Home wasn't a place that held us back. It was a place we could always return to, but we didn't have to stay trapped there. We were free, and we were going on an adventure. The train journey to Kerala took almost a full day and night, but I didn't mind. In fact, I loved it. There was something magical about watching the landscape change outside the window, the cities giving way to villages, the dry plains transforming into lush greenery, the air itself feeling different as we moved south. Ananya sat by the window, her face glowing with excitement. She took photos of everything: fields, rivers, small stations, even random cows grazing by the tracks. Arvind read a book he'd bought at the station, something he never had time to do at home, and I just sat there, soaking it all in, feeling like I was waking up from a very long sleep. We talked, we laughed, we ate snacks from vendors at every stop. At one point, Ananya rested her head on my shoulder and said, "Thank you, Ma, for this, for everything." I kissed the top of her head. "You don't need to thank me," I said. "This is what life should be." We arrived in Kerala early the next morning, stepping off the train into warm, humid air that smelled like rain and earth and something sweet I couldn't identify. A driver from our tour company was waiting for us, holding a sign with Arvind's name on it. He greeted us with a wide smile and loaded our bags into a van. "First time in Kerala?" he asked as we drove. "First time anywhere," I admitted. He laughed. "Then you're in for a treat." And he was right. Our first stop was the backwaters of Aleppi, where we were supposed to spend 2 nights on a houseboat. When we arrived at the dock and I saw the boat for the first time, I actually gasped. It was beautiful, wooden, with a thatched roof, windows all around, and a small deck at the front. It looked like something out of a dream. A young man welcomed us aboard and showed us around. There was a bedroom, a small sitting area, and even a tiny kitchen where a cook was already preparing lunch. "This is all ours?" Ananya asked, her eyes wide. "All yours," the man said, smiling. "For 2 days this is your home." We set sail, or whatever you call it when a houseboat starts moving, and I stood on the deck, watching the water ripple past, the palm trees swaying on the banks, small villages appearing and disappearing like scenes from a painting. It was the most peaceful thing I'd ever experienced. Lunch was served on the deck: fish curry, rice, vegetables, all cooked fresh and served on banana leaves. It was the best meal I'd had in months, maybe because I didn't have to cook it myself, or maybe because everything just tasted better here. That evening, as the sun set and the sky turned shades of orange and pink, the three of us sat together on the deck, not saying much, just being. Ananya leaned against me, Arvind held my hand, and for the first time in a very long time I felt complete. "I can't believe we almost missed this," Ananya said softly. "What do you mean?" I asked. "If I'd gotten married, if everything had gone the way it was supposed to, we'd never have done this. We'd never have taken this trip. I'd probably be sitting in someone's kitchen right now, trying to please people who don't even like me." I squeezed her hand. "But you're not, you're here with us." She smiled. "Yeah, I am." The next day, the houseboat took us deeper into the backwaters, through narrower canals where the trees formed a canopy overhead, and the only sounds were birds and the gentle splash of water. We saw fishermen casting nets, children playing by the water, women washing clothes on the banks. It was a different world, a simpler world, and I found myself thinking, why did I spend so much of my life complicating things? Why did I let other people's expectations become my prison? That night, after Ananya had gone to bed, Arvind and I sat on the deck under the stars. "I'm sorry," he said suddenly. I looked at him. "For what?" "For not seeing it sooner. For pushing so hard to make that wedding happen. I was so focused on doing what I thought was right that I forgot to ask what actually was right." "You were trying to protect her," I said. "We both were. But you were the one who had the courage to stop it," he said. "I would have kept going, kept sacrificing until there was nothing left. You saved us, Mira." I felt tears prick my eyes. "We saved each other," I said. He pulled me close, and we sat there in the quiet, the stars above us, the water below, and nothing but peace between us. The next part of our trip took us to a beach resort in Varkala. The moment I saw the ocean, I understood why Ananya had wanted to come so badly. It was vast, endless, powerful. The waves crashed against the shore with a sound that felt like the heartbeat of the earth. We spent 2 days doing nothing but relaxing. We walked on the beach, collected shells, ate fresh seafood at small shacks, and watched the sunset every evening. Ananya even convinced me to put my feet in the water, something I'd been nervous about. "It's just water, Ma," she laughed. But it wasn't just water. It was freedom. One afternoon, while Arvind was napping and Ananya was reading under an umbrella, I walked down to the edge of the water by myself. I stood there, letting the waves wash over my feet, and I thought about everything that had happened. The wedding that didn't happen, the money we didn't spend, the life we didn't sign away. And I realized something. I'd spent so much of my life being afraid of judgment, afraid of failure, afraid of stepping outside the lines that society had drawn for me. But fear had never protected me. It had only made me smaller. Standing there with the ocean in front of me and my family safe and happy behind me, I felt something shift. I wasn't afraid anymore. That evening, we had dinner at a beachside restaurant. The waiter brought us fresh fish, grilled with spices, and coconut rice and mango lassi. We ate slowly, savoring every bite, talking about everything and nothing. "I want to do this more often," Ananya said. "Traveling, seeing new places. Living, then you should," I said. Don't wait for permission, don't wait for the perfect time, just do it, she smiled. You've changed, Ma. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I'm just finally becoming who I was supposed to be. The last part of our trip took us to the tea plantations of Munnar. The air was cool and crisp, the hills covered in endless rows of green. We took a guided tour, learned how tea was grown and processed, and even picked some leaves ourselves. Standing on those hills, surrounded by green as far as the eye could see, I felt something I'd never felt before: gratitude. Not for what I had, but for what I'd let go of. On our last night, we stayed in a small cottage on a hilltop. We sat on the balcony, wrapped in blankets, sipping hot tea and watching the stars. This was the best decision we ever made, Arvind said. Canceling the wedding? I asked. Taking this trip, he said. Both, actually. Ananya laughed. I can't wait to tell people about this. About how we turned a disaster into the best week of our lives. Let them talk, I said, smiling. Let them wonder. We know the truth. All good things come to an end, they say, and our week in Kerala was no exception. But as we boarded the train back home, I didn't feel sad. I felt renewed. Like I'd left behind an old version of myself somewhere between the backwaters and the beach, and I was bringing home someone stronger. The journey back was quieter than the journey there. We were all tired, but it was a good kind of tired, the kind that comes from having lived fully, even if just for a few days. Ananya slept most of the way, her head resting against the window. Arvind read his book, occasionally looking up to smile at me, and I spent the time thinking about what came next. We couldn't stay on vacation forever. Real life was waiting for us: bills, responsibilities, routines. But I promised myself that I wouldn't let real life swallow me up again. I'd tasted freedom, and I wasn't going to give it back. When we arrived home, it was late evening. Our building looked the same as it always had, but I saw it differently now. It wasn't a cage, it was just a place. We carried our bags upstairs, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. Everything was exactly as we'd left it, but it felt different. Smaller, maybe, or maybe we'd just grown. The next morning, I woke up early, made tea, and sat by the window. The neighborhood was waking up, people heading to work, kids going to school, vendors setting up their carts. Normal life. Arvind came and sat beside me. Back to reality, he said. Reality isn't so bad, I replied. Not when you know it's not all there is. Over the next few days, we eased back into routine. Ananya returned to college. Arvind went back to work. I went back to managing the house. But something had shifted in all of us. Ananya seemed lighter, more confident. She laughed more easily, spoke up more in class, even started talking about plans after graduation. Teaching, maybe traveling, maybe pursuing further studies. She wasn't in a hurry to get married anymore, and neither were we. Arvind seemed more relaxed too. The stress that had been weighing him down for months was gone. He even started talking about taking smaller trips on weekends, exploring places closer to home. And me, I started saying no. It sounds simple, but it was revolutionary. When a relative called asking me to host a family gathering at our place, I said no. When a neighbor asked me to cook for her son's birthday because you make the best samosas, I said no, not this time. When Mrs. Sharma tried to set up a meeting with another boy's family for Ananya, I said absolutely not. People were surprised. Some were offended, but I didn't care. I'd spent decades putting everyone else first, and where had it gotten me? Exhausted, invisible, voiceless. Not anymore. About 2 weeks after we returned, I got a phone call from an unknown number. I answered cautiously. Hello, is this Mira Auntie, Ananya's mother? It was a woman's voice, polite but unfamiliar. Yes, who is this? My name is Kavita, I'm Ravi's cousin, I hope you don't mind me calling. Ravi gave me your number, I tensed. What is this about? I wanted to talk to you. About what happened, if you have a few minutes. I almost said no, but curiosity got the better of me. All right, she took a deep breath. I heard about the wedding being called off, and I heard why, and I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I blinked, surprised. You're sorry? Yes, I know my aunt and uncle, I know how they are, and I'm sorry they treated you and your family that way, it wasn't right. Thank you, I said slowly. But why are you calling me? Because I want you to know that not everyone in our family agrees with them. Some of us think what they did was wrong. And some of us think you did exactly the right thing by walking away. I felt a lump form in my throat. I appreciate that. I also wanted to tell you, she continued, that Ravi has been miserable. He realized too late what he lost. He's been talking about Ananya, about how he should have stood up for her. For what it's worth, I think he's learned something from this. That's good, I said. I hope he treats the next girl better. There won't be a next girl for a while, Kavita said. My aunt is having a hard time finding matches now. Word got around about the dowry demands. People are talking. I didn't feel joy at hearing that, but I didn't feel sorry either. Actions have consequences. We talked for a few more minutes before hanging up. I didn't tell Ananya about the call. She was moving forward, and I didn't want to pull her back into the past. But the conversation stayed with me. It reminded me that standing up for yourself doesn't just change you, it ripples outward, affecting others, sometimes in ways you'll never see. A few weeks later, Ananya came home excited. She'd been offered a teaching position at a good school, starting right after her graduation. It wasn't a huge salary, but it was respectable, and more importantly, it was hers. She earned it on her own merit, not because of who her family was or what they could offer. We celebrated that night, just the three of us, with homemade biryani and sweets from the local shop. No fancy party, no extended family, just us, and it was perfect. I'm proud of you, I told Ananya as we cleaned up after dinner. For getting the job, she asked. For everything. For being brave enough to walk away from something that wasn't right, for choosing yourself. She hugged me tight. I learned that from you, Ma. One evening, a few days later, I was at the market again when I ran into Mrs. Sharma. I braced myself for another lecture, but instead she surprised me. Mira, she said, her tone softer than usual. I heard Ananya got a teaching job, congratulations. Thank you, I said cautiously. She hesitated, then said, I also heard about your trip to Kerala. I waited, expecting judgment. But instead she said, that must have been nice. It was, I said. She nodded slowly. No, I haven't taken a vacation in 15 years. My husband always says there's no time, no money. But after hearing about your trip, I started thinking maybe we're just making excuses. I looked at her surprised. It's never too late, I said. She gave me a small smile. Maybe you're right. As I walked home that day, I realized something. Change doesn't just happen to you. It happens through you. By choosing differently, by living differently, you give other people permission to do the same. That night, Arvind and I were sitting together, talking about mundane things, bills, groceries, the broken tap in the bathroom, normal life. But then he said, I was thinking, maybe next year we could take another trip, maybe even go abroad. I laughed. Abroad, Arvind, we've never even been to half of India. So, why not dream bigger? He was right, why not? Where would you want to go? I asked. I don't know, Europe maybe, or Thailand, somewhere neither of us have ever imagined going. I smiled. Let's do it, let's save up and go. And just like that, we had something to look forward to again. Not a wedding, not a burden, not someone else's expectations, just a dream, our dream. Life has a funny way of surprising you when you least expect it. Just when I thought things had settled into a comfortable new normal, something happened that I never saw coming. It started with a phone call. Ananya had been working at her new teaching job for about 2 months, and she seemed happy. She'd come home every evening with stories about her students, about lessons that went well or funny things kids said. It was good to see her so engaged, so alive. One Saturday afternoon, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but local. I answered. Hello. Hello, is this Mrs. Meera Verma? A woman's voice asked. Yes, who is this? My name is Sunita Kapoor. I'm a writer for a women's magazine called New Voices. I was hoping I could speak with you about a story. I was confused. A story? What story? About you, she said. About how you canceled your daughter's wedding and took your family on vacation instead of going into debt for dowry demands. My heart skipped a beat. How do you know about that? Your story has been circulating in certain circles, she said. Someone who knows your family shared it with a women's support group online and it eventually reached us. We'd love to feature you in our magazine if you're willing. I didn't know what to say. I don't know, this was a private family matter. I understand, Sunita said gently. But Mrs. Verma, your story is important. There are thousands of women out there facing the same pressures, making the same sacrifices, thinking they have no choice. You chose differently, that's powerful. I told her I needed time to think about it and would call her back. After I hung up, I just sat there stunned. A magazine wanted to write about me, about us. When Arvind came home and I told him, his first reaction was concern. Are you sure you want this? People already talk. This will make it worse. Or better, I said. Maybe it'll make them think. When I told Ananya, her reaction was different. Her eyes lit up. Ma, you should do it. You should tell our story. You have no idea how many girls are trapped in situations like I was. If hearing about you helps even one person, isn't it worth it? She was right. I called Sunita back the next day and agreed to the interview. We met at a cafe the following week. Sunita was younger than I expected, maybe in her early 30s, with kind eyes and a notebook full of questions. We talked for almost 2 hours. I told her everything: the demands, the stress, the breaking point, the decision to walk away, the vacation. She listened carefully, taking notes, occasionally asking follow-up questions. What was the hardest part? She asked at one point. I thought about it. The fear, I said. Fear of judgment, fear of being wrong, fear of ruining my daughter's future. But then I realized I wasn't ruining her future, I was saving it. And what would you say to other women in similar situations? That you have a choice, I said. It might not feel like it, but you do. And choosing your dignity, your daughter's dignity, is never the wrong choice. The article came out 3 weeks later. Sunita sent me a copy before it was published. The headline read, "The Mother Who Said No, One Woman's Stand Against Dowry Culture." I cried when I read it. Not because it was sad, but because seeing my story in print made it real, made it matter. When the magazine hit stands, the response was immediate. My phone didn't stop ringing. Relatives called, some supportive, some angry. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years reached out. Women I'd never met sent messages through social media, thanking me, sharing their own stories. One message in particular stuck with me. It was from a young woman named Priya, not my sister, a different Priya. She wrote, "I've been engaged for 6 months and my fiancé's family keeps adding to their demands. My parents are drowning in debt trying to meet them, and I felt so helpless. But after reading your story, I realized I don't have to go through with this. I'm calling off my engagement. Thank you for showing me that it's possible." I read that message over and over again. If nothing else came from the article, that alone made it worth it. But things did get complicated. The attention wasn't all positive. Some people in our community were furious. They felt I'd embarrassed them, exposed dirty laundry, made us all look bad. One of Arvind's relatives even stopped speaking to us. "You've made us a spectacle," she said. "Do you have any idea what people are saying?" "Let them say it," I replied calmly. The truth is more important than comfort. But the hardest moment came from an unexpected place. One evening, there was a knock on our door. I opened it to find Ravi's mother standing there. I was shocked. We hadn't spoken since I'd called off the wedding. She looked different, older, tired. "May I come in?" she asked, her voice quiet. I hesitated, then stepped aside. She came in and sat down in our small living room, looking around like she was seeing it for the first time. "I read the article," she said. "I didn't respond." "You painted us as villains," she continued. "But you don't understand. We were only following tradition, doing what everyone does." "That doesn't make it right," I said. She was quiet for a moment. Then, to my surprise, her eyes filled with tears. "My daughter is getting married next year," she said. "And the boy's family has made demands, big demands. And suddenly I'm on the other side of it. I'm the one being asked to pay to prove my daughter's worth with money and gold." She wiped her eyes. "I came here because I wanted to say I'm sorry. You were right about all of it, and I was wrong." I didn't know what to say. I'd imagined many scenarios, but not this. "What will you do?" I asked. "About your daughter's wedding?" "I don't know yet," she admitted. "But I know I can't do to her what I tried to do to you." She stood up to leave, then turned back. "Ravi asks about Ananya sometimes. He still cares about her." "She's moved on," I said gently. "He should too." She nodded sadly and left. After she was gone, I sat there for a long time, thinking about how complicated people are. She wasn't evil. She was just lost in a system that taught her to value the wrong things. And maybe, just maybe, she was finding her way out. The article continued to generate responses for weeks. I was invited to speak at a local women's group meeting. I was nervous. I'd never spoken in public before, but Ananya encouraged me. "You're not just telling your story, Ma," she said. "You're giving others permission to tell theirs." So I went. There were about 30 women there of all ages. I stood at the front of the room, my hands shaking, and I told our story. When I finished, there was silence. Then one woman started clapping, and soon everyone joined in. Afterward, several women came up to me, some with tears in their eyes, sharing their own experiences. One older woman held my hands and said, "I wish I'd had your courage 40 years ago." That night, lying in bed next to Arvind, I said, "I never meant for any of this to happen. I just wanted to protect our daughter." "I know," he said, "but look what came from it. You started something, Mira. You started a conversation." "Do you think it'll change anything?" I asked. "Maybe not everything," he said, "but something, and that's more than most people do." I thought about that. Change doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small moments, small decisions, small acts of courage. And if my small act helped even one person, then it was enough. Months passed, and life continued its steady rhythm, but everything felt different now. Not in dramatic ways, but in small, meaningful ones. Ananya grew more confident with each passing week. She loved teaching and her students loved her. She started a small savings account, planning her own trips, her own future, independent and free. She went on a few dates here and there, boys she met through friends or work, but she wasn't in a hurry. "I'm getting to know myself first," she told me once, "before I let someone else in." I couldn't have been prouder. Arvind and I started taking small weekend trips every few months. Nothing as elaborate as Kerala, but enough to break the routine. We visited nearby temples, hill stations, small towns we'd only heard about. We took photos, ate local food, held hands like we hadn't done in years. Our marriage felt new again. And me, I kept speaking. The women's group invited me back several times. I started volunteering with an organization that helped women facing domestic and financial abuse. I shared my story, listened to theirs, and together we built a small community of support. It wasn't much, but it was something. One afternoon, about 6 months after the article was published, I received a letter in the mail. It was handwritten, on simple paper, and the return address was from a small town I'd never heard of. I opened it and began to read. "Dear Mrs. Mira, you don't know me, but I know your story. I read about you in the magazine my sister sent me. I'm writing to tell you that you saved my life. I was about to take my own life because my family was forcing me into a marriage I didn't want, to a man whose family demanded things we could never afford. My father took loans, my mother sold her jewelry, and I felt like I was destroying them. I couldn't see a way out. But then I read your story. And I realized there was another option. I showed the article to my mother, and she cried. Then she showed it to my father. It took time, but eventually they called off the wedding. We're still struggling financially, but I'm alive. I'm here, and I have hope now. Thank you for being brave enough to share your story. You didn't just save your daughter. You saved me too, with gratitude and jolly." I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Arvind found me sitting at the kitchen table, holding the letter, crying. "What happened?" he asked, alarmed. I handed him the letter. He read it silently, and when he looked up, his eyes were wet too. "You did this," he said softly. "We did this," I corrected, "all of us." That letter changed something in me. I realized that what we'd done, what had felt like such a personal, small decision at the time, had rippled out further than I could have imagined. We started a conversation. We'd given people permission to choose differently, and that was worth everything. Not long after, I was contacted by a documentary filmmaker. She wanted to make a short film about women who'd stood up against dowry demands, and she wanted to feature our story. This time, I didn't hesitate. I said yes. The filming took place over several days. They interviewed me, Arvind, and Ananya. They visited our home, filmed us going about our daily lives, and even included footage from one of my talks at the women's group. When the documentary was released online, it reached thousands of people. News outlets picked it up, social media shared it. Suddenly, our story wasn't just local anymore, it was everywhere. With the attention came criticism, of course. Some people said I was being too harsh on tradition, that I was westernizing Indian culture, that I was encouraging daughters to disobey their parents. I read those comments, and while they stung, they didn't shake me, because for every negative comment, there were 10 positive ones. Messages from women who'd found the courage to say no. From parents who'd stopped pressuring their daughters. From men who'd started questioning their own family's demands. One message came from a young man named Arjun. He wrote, "I'm getting married next year and my parents were making demands from my fiancé's family. I didn't think much of it, everyone does it right. But after watching your documentary, I realized how wrong it was. I told my parents that we don't want anything. No dowry, no gifts, nothing, just the girl. My parents were shocked at first, but eventually they agreed. Thank you for opening my eyes. Reading that, I realized something important. This wasn't just about women. It was about changing the way everyone thinks, men, women, families, communities. One evening, Ananya came home with a big smile on her face. Ma, guess what? What? I've been asked to give a talk at my college about our story, about standing up for yourself. They want me to speak to the students. I felt a surge of pride. Are you going to do it? Yes, she said without hesitation. I want to. I want other girls to know they have a choice. When the day came, Arvind and I went to watch her speak. She stood at the podium in front of hundreds of students, poised and confident, and she told our story in her own words. She talked about the fear, the pressure, the breaking point. And then she talked about the freedom that came from choosing yourself. When she finished, the auditorium erupted in applause. Students rushed up to her afterward, asking questions, sharing their own stories, thanking her. I watched from the back of the room, tears in my eyes, thinking, this is what it was all for. Not the attention, not the articles or documentaries. This, empowering the next generation to choose differently. As time went on, the attention faded as it always does. Life returned to normal, or at least our new version of normal. But the impact remained. I still get letters and messages, even now. I still speak at events occasionally. And most importantly, I still see the change in my daughter, in my husband, and in myself. We're not the same people we were a year and a half ago. We're stronger, braver, freer. One quiet Sunday morning, the three of us were having breakfast together. Ananya was talking about a student who'd confided in her about family pressure. Arvind was planning our next trip, maybe Rajasthan this time. And I was just sitting there, sipping my tea, listening, feeling grateful. Ma, Ananya said suddenly. Do you ever regret it, canceling the wedding? I thought about it. Not for a single second, I said. Do you? She smiled. No, that wedding would have been the biggest mistake of my life. What we did instead, that was the best decision. Arvind raised his teacup. To best decisions, he said. We clinked our cups together and laughed. Later that day, I was cleaning out a drawer and found an old photo from the day we'd returned from Kerala. We were at the train station, tired but happy, our faces glowing with sunburn and joy. I looked at that photo for a long time. We looked different, not just physically, but in some deeper way. We looked free. I put the photo in a frame and placed it on our living room shelf next to our other family photos. A reminder of the day we chose ourselves. That night, I sat down and wrote a letter, not to anyone in particular, but to every woman who might need to hear it someday. Friend, I wrote, if you're reading this, maybe you're in a place I once was, trapped between duty and desire, between what's expected and what's right. Maybe you're being told that your worth is measured in gold, in dowries, in how much your family can give. I want you to know something. You are worth more than that, so much more. You are worth love that doesn't come with a price tag. You are worth respect that doesn't need to be bought. You are worth a life where you are valued for who you are, not what you bring. And if anyone, family, society, tradition, tells you otherwise, you have the right to walk away. It won't be easy. People will talk, they'll judge, they'll say you're selfish, that you're ruining everything, that you're bringing shame. Let them talk, because on the other side of that judgment is freedom. On the other side is a life where you can breathe, where you can dream, where you can be yourself. I'm not saying you have to do what I did. Everyone's situation is different. but I am saying you have a choice. You always have a choice. And whatever you choose, choose yourself. Choose your dignity. Choose your future. I'm rooting for you. We all are. With love and strength, Mira. I folded the letter and put it away. Maybe someday I'd share it. Maybe it would reach someone who needed it. Or maybe it was just for me, a reminder of how far I'd come. As I got ready for bed that night, Arvind was already asleep, snoring softly. I stood by the window, looking out at the quiet street below, the lights in windows, the lives being lived in all those homes. I thought about all the women out there facing their own battles, making their own difficult choices. And I sent out a silent wish that they find their courage, their voice, their freedom, just like I did. I climbed into bed, pulled the blanket up, and closed my eyes. Tomorrow would be another ordinary day. But ordinary felt different now. Ordinary felt like enough. Because I'd learned the most important lesson of all. You don't need permission to live your life. You don't need anyone's approval to choose your own happiness. You just need courage. And courage, I discovered, isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to move forward anyway. We canceled the wedding, taken the vacation, and found something more valuable than any dowry could ever buy. We found ourselves. And that was worth everything. Some stories don't end with perfect happiness. They end with something better: truth. This is my truth. I'm just a mother who said no when everyone expected me to say yes. I'm just a woman who chose differently when everyone else was choosing the same. But sometimes that's enough. Sometimes one person's courage creates a ripple that reaches shores they'll never see. If you're listening to this and you're facing your own impossible choice, I want you to know you're not alone. And you're stronger than you think. Thank you for listening to my story. May you find the courage to write your own.